love to work for Sony someday. They're my favorite company, but reviews came out for Madam Web and predictably they aren't good. I'd love to ask Tom Rothman what he saw after Morbius that made him think, yeah, the screenwriters of Madam Web, you're the guys for the job to do this movie. There is no major movie studio that intentionally makes bad movies like Sony does. You know, they go on and they say, oh, we want to do it for the fans, but they just get writers with no experience or bad experience routinely to make their blockbuster movies, and then they come out and they're garbage, and it's not surprising at all. As a fan, it annoys me to no end. You're telling me they carved out this space in February, have no other movies coming out, focus millions and millions of dollars on advertising on a movie from the writers of The Gods of Egypt. Or they're surprised when Uncharted, which I actually liked despite itself, is poorly written and gets poorly reviewed. And then the actors have to defend why they're in a bad movie, which they knew it would be all along. And it's because Sony just has no quality control when it comes to their movies. They haven't won Best Picture since the 80s. Every once in a while, they throw a bone to an actual filmmaker like Quentin Tarantino or Greta Gerwig, but they routinely do not care about quality in their films whatsoever. They are garbage. They're so terrible. And they make them that way on purpose. I'd love to ask Tom Rothman, Tom, you're like an English professor. You're an English lit professor. Why aren't you capable of making a good blockbuster movie? Because you're undoubtedly the worst movie studio when it comes to making quality films. And again, I say that as a huge Sony fan. The fact that, The Last of Us had to be made with a Warner Brothers company in order to be good should say a lot. Twisted Metal is a hit because, it was co-made with Universal. Gran Turismo was surprisingly good, but they hired Neil Blomkamp, who hadn't made a good film since his first movie, and they came to him about the movie. It's just, Sony, what are you doing, Sony Pictures? Yeah, you have one thing going for you, and that's you know how to make cheap movies, which is a skill that I guess all of the other major studios have forgotten with their $200 million movies, and good on them, but you're giving us nothing. These movies are terrible. We know it's going to be terrible. We know The Legend of Zelda is going to be awful. Why are you making it? Because you don't care. I honestly think Tom Rothman does not care about the quality of his movies. And from that standpoint, you're like, oh, the businessman, it makes sense. But you can do both. I mean, come on. It is beyond ridiculous and beyond frustrating to me as a wannabe filmmaker, a film fan, and a gamer that Sony Pictures just so routinely makes terrible, terrible, terrible movies. They suck.